Welcome again. As you see, my name is Edwin. I'm accompanied today with Roland and Nicole. So Nicole is working at Sparq, and you will see she's doing a lot of work with Rabobank. Roland is the founder and CEO of WELBO, who is one of our software partners and has been for the past closing on 5 years now, one of our main and top partners in Europe. And myself, Edwin, I'm representing today SoftBank Robotics Europe. Just a quick word on who we are before we really start deep diving into the main subject. But before everything, on the organization part, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them. You have two ways of doing them, directly into the Q&A section that you'll find, I think at the bottom of your Zoom. You should have a button there. Or you can ask them also directly into the chat, which we will check with the moderating team. We'll try to answer all of them during the presentation, or also allocating some time after the presentation to answer all of them. But as we have a limited time today, if there are any questions that are not answered, we will give you our contact details so you can ask them directly to us later. Yeah, that's it for the organization. Onto the presentation now. So briefly, who we are, just as, for example, at the beginning, SoftBank Robotics, and then we'll go into the other companies. So as you may know or not, we are the manufacturer of the robots Naos and Peppers, mainly. Others also like Wiz. We have 500 employees today. Out of those 500, 350 are located where I am right now in Paris. So most of the R&D team and hardware and software is done here. Today we have 25 Naos and Peppers deployed, roughly half and half. And yeah, but we are today mainly focusing on banking. And so regarding banking, we have 400 robots that are active today in the banking sector. It's a sector in which we came later than other verticals, because of several things, mainly the features of the robots and also the experience we needed. And out of those, we are just mentioning a few clients with which we are working today and have a lot of robots. HSBC, 20 robots also. Mizuho, for example, in Japan, more than 50 robots. And of course, Rabobank in the Netherlands and other countries for which we are talking today and doing this webinar. I'm letting the floor to Roland right now to talk more about his company, WELBO.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Edwin. So maybe to re-emphasize that we very much appreciate any questions that you may have. To post them in the chat. It's always great to have more of a dialogue than a one-way conversation. So please do ask your questions. A little bit about myself before I dive into WELBO and what we do here. So I'm Roland van Oers. I don't have a technical background. My background is in business. I was in consulting for a long time, but in the end, I wanted to actually build a company that brings real solutions into the world. And about 5 years ago, I decided, well, robots are a beautiful thing. I mean, they tickled my inspiration, my imagination since I was 12, I think, when I watched Star Wars. But there were two limiting factors in my mind. One, it's Star Wars. It's a fairy tale. It's science fiction. And the other, well, I don't have a technical background, so what do I bring to the table? And then I very quickly found out, as I wrote an article about this subject, that, well, it was not science fiction anymore. Pepper had already been released to the market. This was in end of 2015. And there were many other platforms coming as well. And also there was a very strong need from the market to look at how can you bring these solutions to life? How can you integrate them into processes? How can you improve service with social robots? So that's when we started WELBO. And we operate at the intersection of technology, digital, and hospitality. So from the very start, we thought that the Pepper platform, the social robot Pepper, was a great solution for hospitality. So where many companies focus on doing many things for many people, we try to focus on building the best robot receptionist. And in order to do that, we work with many partners, including Sparq, that Nicole will tell a little bit more about in a moment. But in essence, we try to focus on, pulling people into the conversation with the robot and keeping the people there and trying to create some sort of joy. In the end, we believe that not everything has to be a social robot, right? There is a place for screens and tablets and other types of technology, but there are definitely use cases where it makes a lot of sense to introduce social robots, particularly when it makes sense to create some sort of joy. And we really believe that this technology allows us to do that. We've been at it since 2016, and we have about 35 robots out there now, predominantly in the Netherlands, Belgium, and UK. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Sparq, Nicole.
Thank you for introducing me, Roland and Edwin. It's an honor to be here today at this webinar. My name is Nicole. I'm a business consultant at Sparq, and Sparq is a company of Randstad. My passion is innovation, and we combine the experience in human capital and the expertise of high-end reception services. And we strongly believe that an excellent guest journey makes companies more successful. So let me tell you something about the content of today. It's about the best practice we built at Rabobank, and that where we have successfully integrated tech and touch in the guest journey. What were the challenges we faced and how we overcome these, and what were the key to success factors. So let's start with lesson 1.
Thanks. So a little bit about Rabobank before we move into the content of what we do there, because maybe not everybody is familiar with the bank. So it's one of the largest financial institutions in the world. They're present in 37 countries. They have almost 10 million customers. About 9 million of those are in the Netherlands, and about 700,000 are international. And the Rabobank is a bank that has been, well, it was founded by, they say it was founded by farmers. So it was a traditional farmers bank, and that is still present in their, in their current way of doing business. It's very much focused on growing a better world together, on sustainability, on finding ways to transition to a more sustainable future. And yeah, we're very happy to be present at their main office. You see a little picture in the top right of the screen. It's their headquarters in Utrecht. It's a city in the center of the Netherlands. And yeah, that's where we host together with Sparq. And let me tell you a little bit more about what we actually do there. So Rabobank HQ is a central location in the Rabobank real estate asset portfolio. They receive a lot of visitors, about 500 visitors per day. And those range from employees, obviously, coming into the office, customers, partners, suppliers, all kinds of organizations. It also has a huge auditorium where many events are hosted. Of course, I'm speaking pre-COVID times, and hopefully very quickly post-COVID times as well. But so there's a coming and going all the time of people in the main lobby. And the Rabobank, we started talking to them about I would say 3.5 years ago. They were very clear that both the guest and the employee experience, they have to underline first of all, the sustainable nature of the Rabobank. That's a very important theme for them. But also, coupled with this sustainable nature, they wanted to put a face on all the innovation efforts that they have ongoing inside and outside the bank. So all kinds of robotic process automation, artificial intelligence services, and also robotization. So there were all these beautiful projects going on, but it was not very, they didn't really were able to put a face on it. So when Pepper came along, they saw a big opportunity to first of all, of course, provide a great hospitality service, but also to emphasize the innovative nature of the organization. So what you see a lot in deploying social robots of this kind is that some sort of discussion starts about robots versus people, or should we use can a robot ever provide warm hospitality, or shouldn't we put people because they're very important? And I think it's important to note that we as a company, WELBO, have always said we're not doing this for the robots, right? We're doing this for the people. We're trying to automate some parts of the guest journey so that the people that are there have more time for the other people. And I think that's a perfect fit also with Sparq, who has the same vision. And from the very start, we tried to say, okay, what can we do? Where, how can we integrate the humans and the robots in the optimal way to create the best possible service together? And that is exactly what Rabobank really appreciated, and that's the path that we chose to take together. And of course, we've had many iterations since the first implementation a couple of years ago, and we're happy to tell you more about how that went. You can also see that Rabobank is taking this development very seriously. They even mentioned it in their annual report, the quality and the innovation of digital services, artificial intelligence, robotization. It's really part of the DNA of the organization. And yeah, I think the Rabobank is very serious about experimenting, trying new things, and really developing. Continuous improvement is a very important theme for them. And I think it's been pivotal to our success, our joint success in the hospitality of the Rabobank organization. If there are any questions, you'll interrupt me, right, Edwin? Okay, great. I think I can't, well, we have to discuss COVID as well, right? It was a very interesting year in that sense. When you're building reception robot solutions and most receptions close, that's, yeah, it's a bit of an unwelcome development, obviously, apart from all the horrible societal costs that we have, the other societal costs that we have experienced. But we did see that this only lasted for a brief amount of time, at least here in the Netherlands. Very soon there was some reopening, in the sense that there were some meetings that just had to take place at the office. It was possible to book meetings, and there was a little bit of traffic in the building. And then it became imperative for us to help the guests to stick to the guidelines, right? So one of the very clear guidelines of the Rabobank is that we should keep 1.5 meter distance. And obviously, Pepper was one of the tools in the arsenal to help people understand that this is important. We created a simple application in a sort of a gamified way that would tell the user whether she was too close or too far away. And that enabled us to teach people in a friendly way what keeping 1.5 meter distance really means. And apart from the 1.5 meter distance, there were several other rules and regulations set by the Rabobank that the robot was able to explain in a calm yet structured way. And I think this also allowed us to reopen in a little bit in a safe way, at least as safe as possible. So what do we do on a daily basis at the Rabobank? I think there are three main use cases. First of all, there's the guest check-in. So what we did is we connected with the existing visitor management system of the Rabobank. We do have our own visitor management system built into our software, but we do find a lot of our customers already have a visitor management system in place. So this is typically filled through a different portal where you input the name of the visitor and the time when they will arrive, who they have the appointment with, and some other data. And this data is then brought into our system. I think it's actually updated every 15 minutes. And that allows us to provide a personal welcome to the people that enter the building because we know their names. Based on the name, we then check if we have the right host, so the people they have a meeting with. And we then send a message to the host saying, hey, your guest has arrived. If they don't reply to that, we will also, we send a text message, we send an email. And if they don't reply to that, saying they're on their way, then we will also call them by phone to say, hey, your guest is here. If you then still don't respond, it will pop up in the dashboard, in the software, and the Sparq hosts will be able to see, hey, there's something going wrong here. Somebody's not picking up, somebody's not responding. We need to give this person additional attention. I think it's also good to note that the person they have an appointment with can indicate if they're coming shortly, will they be there in 5, 10, or 15 minutes? And we can also share that information through the robot. So if people are still talking to the robot when this information comes in, and it typically comes in very quickly because people respond, well, as soon as possible, then we can share that information with the guest. That's one, I think that's the key role, one of the main roles that the robot performs. Then there's, of course, the house rules. I just mentioned the 1.5 meter distance, but there are others. And these are very, very relevant now in COVID times, but they will also remain relevant post-COVID to explain how does it work here, where should you go, what can you do, what can't you do. So the robot is a very friendly tool to remind people of the house rules. And you can also think of things like fire safety and those kinds of important elements to be shared. So that's really giving information with the robot. And the third element is the survey element. So when we started out, we used a very easy 1 to 5 Likert scale way of gathering feedback. So we asked, what did you think of our interaction? And then you could give the robot 1 to 5 stars. That has developed since then. So now we can also provide multiple choice answers. So what did you like? Well, I like the lady at the reception. I like the ambiance. I like the colors of on the wall. You can create multiple choice answers to the question, and you can then get more information. But what we can now also do is we can gather open feedback. So we can actually ask, well, how do you feel? What should we improve? And we will capture what people say. And that information can then be downloaded for further processing. And that allows the reception team and Rabobank to continuously improve the reception services. And interestingly enough, we work with several universities to improve our solution. And we found that people are more generous with giving feedback to robots in the sense that they're more honest. So robots take up a little bit less social space than humans do. So even though people are more willing to provide feedback on the one hand, and they're also more honest in their feedback on the other. So it's very valuable to gather feedback with a social robot. You get more responses and you get better feedback. Because you could imagine that if you get a person to ask, there's this social bias where you'll say nicer things when you actually have some serious criticisms, which you do want to capture, because then you can improve your services. So those are the 3 main things that we do at the Rabobank reception area. And just to show you one of the what that actually looks like in practice, here's a very short video of the survey application that we use. So this is one of the 2 robots that are in the lobby in Utrecht today, and I'll show you what it looks like.
Goedemorgen, wat fijn dat je er bent. Van harte gefeliciteerd met je nieuwe baan. Wat vond je van de ontvangstbeleving?
Fantastisch.
Hoe heb je de uitgifte van jouw badge ervaren?
Heel goed.
Wauw, dat is heel fijn om te horen. Ik heb nog een laatste vraag. Hoe prettig en veilig heb je tot nu jouw bezoek beleefd?
Geweldig.
Ik heb je niet goed verstaan. Kun je het nog een keer zeggen of op mijn scherm selecteren?
Heel goed.
Wauw, dat is heel fijn om te horen. Kan ik je nog ergens mee helpen?
So I think it's interesting to see in this video, well, there's a couple of things I'd like to note. So first of all, of course, you can see that everything is voice. We navigate with voice, right? The interaction is based on voice. If for some reason the robot does not understand you very well, it will just simply say so and say, can you repeat what you just said? If it again doesn't hear you well, it will say, look, can you repeat again, or can you use my screen? So you can always use the screen as a backup. And I think we get a lot of questions around, does the voice work? Yeah, I know the screen is black, that's on purpose. There's another video coming up. I just saw the comment. So first of all, there's the element of the voice, which we use primarily, but there's always a backup through the tablet. And another element that you saw was that the Rabobank team actually dressed up the robot a little bit with an orange choker, and I think that's nice to see. We actually see that at a lot of customers, and it really helps. First of all, to see, hey, this robot is part. It helps twofold, I would say. It helps because guests see, hey, this robot is really part of the team, but also it feels like the robot is part of the team for the reception team. So yeah, we always, of course, promote doing this, although I do have to note, and SoftBank keeps telling me this, that you need to do it very carefully because you don't want to constrict any movements. Now, I also want to show you what the check-in interaction looks like, and we have one of our WELBO videos to show you how that works.
Hello, welcome at WELBO. Do you have an appointment, or would you like to know more about me?
I have an appointment.
Great. Could you please tell me your name?
Anna Hathaway.
Can you confirm that you are Anna Hathaway?
Yes, I am.
Can you confirm that you are meeting with Dominique Rose?
Yes, I do.
Amazing. I will let Dominique Rose know that you have arrived. How would you rate your overall reception experience?
It was amazing.
Fantastic. I am so glad to hear that. What was best about your experience?
Hospitality.
I am happy to hear my colleagues treated you well. What could be improved?
The facilities of the building.
Is this what you meant?
That's perfect.
Would you like to add anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Have a pleasant day. Would you like to know more about me?
Just before we continue, Roland, we do have a question for you and Nicole regarding the number of guests, the fact that it is a huge number of guests that you have today in Rabobank's lobby. While the strategy in France, if I do understand the question correctly, seems to be to reduce that number. How do you explain that you have such a huge number of guests? And what is the use of the robot if the strategy then is to lower this number?
You mean, when you mean the strategy is to lower the number, you mean because of COVID, or because the 500 is obviously not the number today. The 500 is in normal operation.
Yes.
So I think today it's, well, I will show you the check-in numbers through the robot a little bit later. They're significantly lower. You know the total?
There are more new hires than visitors, of course.
Yeah, so we're like at around maybe 50 a day, or
there are only visitors that have
an appointment.
So
yeah.
I think it's mostly new hires we receive.
Yeah.
This month.
Yeah, so today the Rabobank still hires a lot of new people, and they do visit the office. That is actually the predominant group of visitors to the office today. Those are also all introduced to the robot, because that's the interaction you just saw, where we measure, okay, how did you feel about your first interaction? Do you feel safe? How did the badge issuing work? So yes, apologies for not being clear. That the 500 is a normal operation. There is no strategy to reduce that number. In fact, the Rabobank really quite enjoys being a hub of activity in normal times. At the moment, yeah, in the Netherlands, we're not that. I mean, I'm sure there are countries where the lockdown is enforced with more strictness than here. However you feel about that, that is the reality. There is a massively reduced number of visitors though at the Rabobank today. Yeah.
The government asks us to work at home, so
yeah.
The Rabobank loves it when we have visitors, but at this moment we don't encourage them to visit the Rabobank.
But still, the fact that we are here at an office today, there are countries where this is like out of the question, and we would get police. Yeah. All right, great question. Any others?
There will be others, but I think we can answer them after the presentation, as we might also give in some information during.
Okay, very good. I'll continue. I'll just switch this. So I think it's interesting to show what we measure, because there's lots of information there. The robot is, of course, filled with sensors, and we continuously, I already mentioned that we save everything that's said. We can save the feedback, but of course we can also save yeah, the number of users, what people say. So I will show you what we look at on a quarterly basis. Well, it's actually looked at a monthly basis, but reviewed on a quarterly basis. This is one of the questions. So how would you rate your first impression on a scale from 1 to 5? And this is the data that was gathered in 2020. So this is the average rating for the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. And you see that actually it's quite high. First impressions are very strong and actually increasing over time, even during the pandemic years, something we were very, well, of course, it was a little ray of light in a very troubling time, so to speak. Another thing we measure is, did you experience your visit here in these extraordinary times as pleasant and safe? Was it pleasant? Was it safe? And again, you see quite a high rating. That also, there's also an upward trend throughout the year. So this is what I mentioned previously. This is the data that's coming in about 2021. Some of the first results. These are the total number of interactions that we have at the Rabobank right now. You see that we had 549 interactions in January and 781 interactions in February. You can also see that the duration of interactions is something so this is a number that we pay a lot of attention to, because a lot of interactions are actually focused on increasing the duration. We first want to sort of seduce people to start using the robot, and that's something that Sparq also helps us with, guiding people towards the robot. And once we have people's attention, once we start the conversation, we want them to, well, obviously first check in, but also we want to provide the information, we want to gather feedback, and in the future we might want to do other things as well. So this is where we try to improve and increase the duration that's possible. On the other hand, especially when it's busy, you don't want to create queues in front of the robot. That's of course not the plan. The whole idea is to reduce the queues. I see a question about pepper counting. So what we know is the amount of, we actually have a pretty good grasp on the amount of people that we can expect at the Rabobank, because the registration, do you know the registration rate, the percentage?
We know our customers we
will see, right? Yeah. So most of the guests are actually pre-registered. So through our connection with Planon, the visitor management system that is in use at the Rabobank, we know how many people are going to arrive. And this allows us to then also tweak the conversation. If we know that it's going to be very busy, we will of course make sure that we don't try to make the duration as long as possible. But if it's actually a little bit more quiet, or for example during lunchtime, then we can focus on increasing the duration and providing more information. And this is something that is managed manually by the Sparq team at the moment, but we're also looking to automate some of that in the future.
We do have questions also on the feedback, and especially on data privacy. So when we collect the feedback and information, how do we manage data privacy, and do we ask the users?
Yeah, great questions, great questions. So first of all, data privacy is of course highly important to us. These are visitors to a bank, and their personal data is flowing through our systems. So as the moment that the name leaves the Planon system and goes into our system, we become a processor, and we need to make sure that we take very good care. One of the ways we do that is by making sure that there is that not everybody has access to it, obviously. That, for example, I don't have access to it, but only some programmers do. Another way to do it is to make sure that we don't save the data, but that it's automatically rotated out of our systems after X amount of time. And that regards the people's names. If you're talking about saving what people have said, I would say that in general, the name capturing is not that accurate. So the risk of capturing names is a lot lower. there. So we are capturing conversations, but those are not necessarily personal data because they cannot be used to lead back to a particular person. Of course, a name is personal data, a meeting time is personal data, so that's all data that you need to be very careful about. What helped in our conversations with Rabobank, but also other customers, is that we were able to get an ISO 27001 certificate about 2 years ago, which is of course the sort of rubber stamp that indicates that you do take this very seriously and that we have processes in place, that we provide training and what have you. And we also do a yearly audit on our information security. And we even had the Rabobank team try to hack the robot and our system. So that actually was a great exercise. They, of course, within the bank have all kinds of teams, IT teams working on this, and they try to attack both the hardware, but also they try to penetrate our servers, the so-called pen test. And we did learn a couple of things, but fortunately they were not successful. But yeah, that's also how we grow, because it's always good to work with partners to do this, because it allows us to make our systems more robust. I think this topic will only become more important, because you can imagine that now we are using names, but you can also imagine that we would use, for example, passports or other personal identification documents to identify individuals. And then there's even more information that you are saving. We're also looking at using emotion capturing, gathering whether you're a man or a woman, approximately what age you have. So all of this information is very interesting when we use it to improve our services. But of course, we have to be very careful that it cannot be traced back to a particular person. We do our utmost to make sure that that is secure. We have never had I'm happy to report we never had any problems in that regard, and we take it very seriously. Great question, by the way. Thanks. Shall I continue, or are there other questions that you?
Other questions that I think are better answered at the end, so
okay.
We can continue for the moment.
Cool. So I think it leads a little bit, it follows a bit actually on the question you just asked, because I already mentioned that we can gather open feedback, so people can speak freely to the robot. So now it becomes very interesting, because we have a number like 1 out of 5. We have maybe multiple choice answers that we pre-selected. We have open feedback. So how do you feel? Which we can then download and analyze. What do people actually think? And we also add a guest sentiment. We also do sentiment analysis. We currently have this available in English and Dutch, but it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's quite possible to add more other languages to this system as well. So I'm not an expert, but like I explained it to my 10-year-old niece, it's basically what we do is we gather all the sentences that are spoken, we cut them up and look at the individual words. And then we test those words against the lexicon to see, okay, is this word positive, neutral, or negative? So pretty, we would classify as a positive word, and bad, we would classify as a negative word, and so on. And by doing that over all the conversations, we can analyze, okay, what is the overall tendency in the guest sentiment? So we now have a lot of data points to work with when we're trying to improve the service. We have all this feedback, and when we see negative feedback or positive feedback that we want to double click, we just go into the data and look at what has actually been said. And this really levels up. This really provides the opportunity to level up your hospitality, because it becomes more data driven. And there is the anecdotal evidence and the emotional intelligence from the hosts on the floor that is now augmented by facts and data that we can then use together to continuously improve the experience of the guests. And we're very excited about this data processing element that we bring into the conversation. And the robot really allows us to gather a lot of data that was not available, that was lost before introducing a solution like this. And I think we now have a video which shows you how we went about co-creating the Rabobank robot. It's called Rabot, actually, at Rabobank. So it may be good to share that Pepper is actually called Rabot in the Rabobank world. And here is Nicole sharing with us how Sparq, WELBO, and Rabobank work together to create this solution.
Welkom, leuk dat jullie kijken. Mijn naam is Terry en ik sta hier vandaag bij de Rabobank in Utrecht. En ik wil jullie heel graag voorstellen aan mijn collega's.
Ik ben Nicole Brouwers, ik ben consultant bij Sparq en ik ben onder andere verantwoordelijk voor productontwikkeling binnen Sparq, binnen het facilitaire werkveld. En we gaan jullie vandaag iets meer vertellen over de co-creatie tussen Rabobank, WELBO en Sparq.
Nicole, ik zie dat je niet alleen bent gekomen.
Nee, dat klopt. We hebben een collega bij ons. Deze collega heeft altijd gekozen.
Hoi Debbie en Nicole, hallo kijkers. Ik ben Rabot.
Rabot, waar liggen jouw goals?
WELBO is het brein achter mijn ontwikkeling.
Sparq mag voor Rabobank op jaarbasis zo'n 125.000 nationale en internationale gasten ontvangen.
Wat houdt die co-creatie precies in?
Ja, dat betekent dat het super is om twee hele ambitieuze partijen als Rabobank en WELBO samen te kunnen werken aan technologische innovatie. Daarbij krijgen we van Rabobank alle ruimte om mee te denken. En WELBO helpt ons om al die ideeën daadwerkelijk tot uitvoering te brengen. De Rabobank wil dat alle bezoekers, maar ook alle medewerkers een veilig en prettig verblijf hebben bij de Rabobank. Daarbij moeten eigenlijk de toegang zo smooth mogelijk verlopen.
Samen met de gastvrouw verzorg ik de aanmelding. Ik stuur een bericht naar de medewerker dat de gast is gearriveerd en vraag wat de gast wil drinken.
Vervolgens krijgt de bezoeker van de gastvrouw een toegangspas uitgereikt. Die maakt een lekkere cappuccino klaar. En die zorgt dat de gast bij de juiste gastgever terechtkomt. Dit is eigenlijk alleen nog maar de light versie. In een later stadium bijvoorbeeld denken aan de QR-code in combinatie met kentekenherkenning. Dat is er nu al, waarbij we de toegang nog verder kunnen vereenvoudigen. De gastvrouw eigenlijk ook echt nog meer aandacht aan de gast kan besteden. Rabobank is continu in beweging en bezig met nieuwe ontwikkelingen.
Samen met de gastvrouw ontvang ik nieuwe collega's op de eerste van de maand. Vragen wat ze van de onboarding vonden.
En die resultaten gaan vervolgens in een slim dashboard. En met al die inzichten kunnen we elke dag weer leren en beter worden in wat we doen. Dus we hebben bijvoorbeeld ook samen met Avond nog een filmpje gemaakt voor medewerkers die gasten ontvangen. En waarbij ze al voor informatie krijgen over een aanstaande bezoek.
Dat klopt.
Bedankt voor het kijken. We houden jullie op de hoogte van onze ontwikkelingen. En zien jullie snel.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think we have a question that leads perfectly to the next section, which is how much supervision does Pepper receive? How has the staff response been? And does all the team get training in supporting Pepper? Which leads perfectly to this next section.
Yeah, thanks. I think Nicole is most suited to answer those questions because it's exactly what she's about to share. So
let's hope I'll give you the answers, and otherwise you ask them afterwards. As you just saw in the movie, that's the end of the result, but there were also challenges we faced. I want to share some of them with you. For me, it really was love at first sight when I met Rabot. However, we have a diverse team. We have students who feel very comfortable with new technology, but we also have hosts who feel a little intimidated, feel anxiety. Some of them may be resistant and being afraid of losing their job and being replaced by a robot. So it's important that you allow these feelings and that you address the emotional needs of the team.
Yeah.
The second part is that what we saw is that for some members of the team, it's really a challenge to adapt to this new technology. And for me, this is really the part what I have underestimated, because we live in a totally digital world. And when you see that the host loves to interact, the human host, with the robot, you see it in the way they're working, you see it in their positive energy and in their their smile. The robot is improving every day, almost every hour I would say. So, for example, it can now approach you by itself. It moves towards the guest, and the host has to easily switch between various applications, and she also, or he, has to adapt to new features. And that's the part, Roland and also Dominique, what I like working with WELBO is their eagerness. They arrange the training to switch between the various applications and to adapt to the new features, and they don't arrange it when I ask, but they already arrange it before I consider to ask, and that makes the team much stronger. So it's very important to pay attention to the development needs of the team. You need an ambitious partner like WELBO, but you also need an environment like Rabobank where you are allowed to make mistakes, where you can learn, so you can grow every day. Go to the next one.
Yeah.
Well, and I think working, somebody asked me how many people had problems getting adjusted to the robot, and it's just like a usual change. People have difficult to change. Changing is for everybody a problem, and it's just similar to any other change that overcomes you. So another lesson we learned is that the hostess of the future, or the host, has to improve her or his skills. In fact, he or she is the director of first impressions, and she's responsible for everything what happens in the lobby, the reception area. So in technology, sometimes there's a little glitch. For example, a few weeks ago it snowed. You can't imagine it today, but it really happened. And when you are working with license plate recognition, sometimes the license plate cannot be recognized. And what you need is a human touch to improvise, and a host who can quickly assist to reduce the waiting line. So when you create a team, you select hosts with appropriate skills, and when you already have a team or a part of the team, take care of skill development. What was the success? How did we integrate tech and touch? I'm a very pragmatic person, and a very important key to success factor is a clarity of roles and a good collaboration between the robot and the human host. They need to understand their most important purpose, and that's a simple one. It's a warm and friendly welcome and smooth, quickly access to the building. So let's take an average day at Rabobank, and we cut the day in pieces and we created different time slots. So in every part of the day, both robot and human host, they switch roles. So we start about 7 in the morning. The first employees enter the building. The host is preparing for the day, and the robot is into its good morning mode. And the second part, about 7:30, 8 o'clock, it's getting more busy in the building. And the most important task of the robot is to check in. And so what Roland already told us, the host can pay full attention to the guest, and sometimes he or she some kind of seduces visitors to check in with the robot, because we must not forget that our most important purpose is to check in quickly and reduce the waiting line.
Yeah.
So then lunch follows. The robot gives information. He entertains, and the host makes a little chit chat with the employees or the visitors. And then about 1:30, the whole check-in procedure restarts, and at 4 o'clock, the robot gets into its goodbye mode. So what's the most important key to success? I think we took leadership to manage a guest journey in which both robot and human host know what's expected, a smooth, friendly check-in. They need to understand the roles.
Yeah.
Maybe some question could be, why don't you automatically program the robot in the time slots? And of course, I think it's easy to realize, but it's manually because every day is different, and we always have to customize our services. So the hostess needs the skills to switch between various applications, but it has to be according to what's happening in real time. And she or her or himself has also has to easily switch to the right mindset. I think you already told about the most 3 important roles of the robot. The last thing I want to tell you is I think one of the most important key to success factors is that you have to have a relaxed environment like Rabobank, and it's almost like a children's playground. And what I mean is that you are allowed to make mistakes, and that you can explore and you can grow by trial and error. So we made some new features. I'll tell briefly about the 3 ones. The first one is already told. It's the survey we created together, and the most important thing, and that's why we are here today, it's almost a collaboration between the human being and the robot. Because when they act together, you will have people that are willing to tell you about their first impression. So we can temperature our services every day, and we can improve our services. Another one is that we have made an invitation for guests, and my friend Rabot welcomes you personally, and it's like an invitation, and he is giving you information about your upcoming visit. So you have a smooth ride when you go to Rabobank, and it's so much more like an experience instead of sending an email with the address. And the last one I want to tell you, it's one of my personal favorites, I think. Of course, it's an important task to inform you about the COVID-19 rules. Personally, I'm a little bit tired, and I understand it's very important to take the guidelines, but it's almost a transaction communication. Take your distance, wash your hands. So we wanted to create something that's in a positive communication. And what we are about to welcome is a little application, and it's just like for people coming back to work. Hi, nice that you're coming back to work. How are you doing? Are you staying healthy? Did you make a little walk today? And robot is making walking movements. That are some examples.
It's a vitality ambition, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, very nice.
So you need a sponsor like Rabobank, where you can explore and where you are allowed to fall sometimes. I think one of the most important things, I'm looking at the time. I see. Okay. So, and the Rabobank is involved. WELBO is ambitious and helps us to realize. And I think a company like Sparq is loves to create and dares to try by trial and error.
Thanks.
We do have a question, in fact, which I think ties a bit into it. Is for what reasons innovation, pure customer welcoming experience before, or any other reason it might be. So for what reason did Rabobank decide to experiment with an hospitality robot at the beginning?
I think, well, our main sponsor at Rabobank, I believe, I'm wondering whether I reached out to him or whether he reached out to us. It's been quite some time ago because we were talking for, I think, 2 years before we decided to work together. So it was not a spur of the moment decision. I always say Rabobank is a very, I mean, Rabobank takes its time to make up their mind. They want to know all the ins and outs before they make up their mind. And when they do, they really go for it. And so I think, of course, I cannot speak out of turn, but I think the main reason is that there is a belief that technology is obviously coming into our lives on all fronts. And the question is, do you want the technology to be hidden or do you want the technology to be visible? And I think Rabobank very explicitly chose it to be visible because they think it adds value. And that, of course, fits in perfectly with the notion of having a humanoid robot in your lobby. Apart from the other things that I mentioned previously around putting a face on innovation efforts and other things. But I think that's the underlying philosophy, so to speak. I hope that starts to answer the question.
Okay.
All right. Because we have limited amount of time left, I'll show a brief video on what the interaction between because I think that's also an important question, right? Everybody asks, what is the atmosphere between the people and the robots, like the direct colleagues? We are called WELBO, welcome bots to your team. Our goal is to make sure that the people really invite the robot into their team. And I think this was a video that was created with Nicole and the team to show what that can look like. Oh, there's no sound. Er is geen geluid.
Samen met de gastvrouw verzorg ik de aanmelding. Ik stuur een bericht naar de medewerker dat de gast is gearriveerd en vraag wat de gast wil drinken.
Wat leuk dat u hier bent. Wij zijn benieuwd naar uw ervaring. Zou je die met mijn collega willen delen?
Samen met de gastvrouw ontvang ik nieuwe collega's op de eerste van de maand. Ze vragen wat ze van de onboarding vonden.
Precies, mevrouw Hoppenbouwers. Zo dadelijk als u uitrijdt, dan gaat de slag op, blijft u open.
Ah, fijn, dankjewel.
Wel thuis.
Tot ziens.
Fijne dag.
Well, you can't fake enthusiasm like that, I think. So that shows what it looks like on the floor. So a couple of things that we want to focus on going forward, because of course we continue to improve the solution as well and innovate as well. We want to strengthen the governance that we have, put in place a little bit more meetings around how are the KPIs developing and what can we do to continuously improve the service. We're looking at automatically dispensing the security passes as well. That won't happen on the robot. Will be a separate unit to do that. We'll try to create additional content for the robot. Some of the things that Nicole already mentioned around vitality. Hopefully, as soon as possible, we'll be able to restart some physical events using the robot. And we're also looking at increased usage of the robot in other offices and other locations within Rabobank. So those are the plans we have for 2021. So I think now we have a little bit of time left for questions.
Yes, so I have some questions there. I think, yeah, we do have here, we will also put our contact details so you can ask us the question directly if I can't go through all of them, because we have quite a lot of them to cover. So the first one was, I'll take them in order, I'm sorry. Will you be covering other segments on webinar in the near future? On our hand, yes, we will do some in the next few weeks on, I know, retail and government hospitality, government services. We don't have a date yet regarding that, so we will keep you updated when we have more information. I work with Pepper. The real problem arises when more people than one are approach him. Do you have any experience in this sense?
Well, I think it's very simple that when multiple people speak to the robot, it will only listen to the one that is directly in front of it. So there is no, I think that's also actually very similar to people. If 3 people are speaking to me at the same time, I tend to ask one of them to communicate with me. But we do try to nudge people to do that, right? So automatically when the robot says, I can't hear you very well, it's clear that it's focused on the person that it's looking at. I don't think the robot was designed to handle multiple requests at the same time. So you have to make sure that we work with that. Yeah.
Perfect. I'm also trying to answer some by chat. How many data can you put in the robot? Our company has a campus in Lutzen. I'm going to butcher the name of the city, I'm sorry. A lot of time we have truck drivers or guests who come to the reception. They need to go to another company at the campus. Is it possible for the robot to give them the right direction?
Absolutely. We do that actually. So we can get the robot to direct, we can give directions like a human would. What you see a lot is that you show a map on the screen. I don't really believe in that because people are not good at reading maps. So we try to actually show icons and guide using the gestures that the robot has. We can also use a different robot to accompany you, or we could even drive a little bit in the right direction to do that. And then to your first part of your question, how much data can you put in the robot? Well, actually, what I didn't tell you earlier is that all our entire solution sits in the cloud. So we keep the application on the robot as thin as possible. So we can put limitless amount of data in the robot because it actually doesn't sit on the robot, but it sits on the network. So you just need a strong internet connection and then there's no problem.
What did you do to reduce the physical interactions with Pepper, like touch hands, the screen during COVID?
Well, we, of course, are primarily focused on talking with voice. So the screen is a backup only, so it's sort of built into our solution. And I think if you talk about reducing the contact with Pepper, so if you touch the robot, in the past we would say, watch out, or we would say, that hurts, watch out, I don't like that. For some, that had the opposite effect. So people, especially children, would start yanking the robot. Now we say, watch out, I'm fragile. That sort of helps. So people leave the robot be. That is something that we implemented. We've had very few physical incidents with the robots in the past 5 years. We've had a couple of minor misfires. We had one hand removed or a finger removed, but we've had very few problems.
Next one is about noise cancellation. If the robot was in a public space, then the listen function may be interrupted. How to improve this function? I think you kind of touched on that before.
I think if you compare voice recognition remains a challenge for all systems, including the Pepper robot. I think if you look at the quality of the reception compared to the robot that we had 5 years ago, it's massively improved. I think one of the key reasons is that the microphone is now no longer next to a fan, and also, of course, on the software side, things have improved. Yeah, again, you can nudge people. The robot very clearly explains when we don't hear the person correctly, and then people typically repeat themselves, and then we do hear correctly. But if it's very noisy, a very noisy environment, you will have to revert to the tablet. Yeah.
Can you change the voice of the robot? Actually, even in different languages, the voice is a bit different. You'll notice that. But can you change it further?
It could be done. It could be done. We have other robots where we use different voices. We try to, in some settings, we, for example, look at slowing the voice a bit down, especially if you're working with elderly people, for example, or creating a bit more pauses. And you can look at the pitch and things like that. So it's possible to change the voice, yes. Yes,
the question was also, is it neutral? It's also neutral not to be too feminine or masculine, because it's still a robot and we don't want the personality to be too strong also. Hi, WELBO team. As you are having many respectable friends under your portfolio, could you also share the use case for each customer with Pepper? You do have some information. I think sending them could be
Yeah, I think let's take that conversation offline. I'm happy to share the use case where I'm allowed to do so. I can share that the majority of use cases are indeed reception services. So the majority of our customers use the robot as a reception robot. We do have some exotics as well, but we can go into that offline.
Same, I think, for the next question is how much was the investment, human resources plus budget, in order to develop this application? I understand this can be confidential, but order of magnitude would be enough if possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have 3 developers that have worked on this application for 5 years now, full time. Then there's, of course, training on the Sparq team, the Rabobank side. Yeah, I would need to give a little bit more thought to it, but it's a substantial investment.
Okay, next question. How do we buy a pepper in Sweden? Call me, and we can arrange that, no problem.
Yeah. Although we do suggest in general, to add to that, that you actually lease the full package, including robots, software and service.
Yeah, of course.
Because then we're able to always provide you with the latest hardware, but you can of course always get a unit yourself.
Do you see possibilities for other organizations like museum?
Yeah, we have several museums working with us. We have, for example, the Technology Museum here in Amsterdam that works with Pepper. We're also looking at the Museum of Sound and Vision here in the Netherlands. And I think what's especially great is that robots add a lot of value to the hospitality, to the entrance, but also actually to the exhibitions themselves. Yeah, you can also look at telepresence robots, for example, to restart visits to the museum. So I think there's many opportunities for museums, absolutely.
Can we get any other NLP to work with Pepper, some predefined ones like Alexa or Google?
Yeah, we actually run Google on the side. So I suggest we take that conversation offline, but we can show you how that technically works. Yeah.
We are running a bit late, but if you're still there, I will continue to answer some question. Where is the Romeo robot? So Romeo is really an internal robot we have been using for development purposes. It will never be sold and will never go out of the office. So it's still there somewhere. I haven't seen him in a while, but it is still here in Paris. Is Pepper only working with Planon or also, for example, with Topdesk?
So Topdesk is an interesting one. It's one of the few ones that we don't have an integration with yet. We have already been in conversations because we have some customers that work with Topdesk. It should be quite easy to do it. We have integrations with, for example, ProxyClick. We have integrations with Xerion. We have also, again, built our own visitor management system. And yeah, creating the integration is not the hard part. The hard part is getting getting someone to ask the other party to create the integration. But no, it's not a lot of work to integrate to other systems as well.
Is the answer about buying the robot in Sweden the same for all other countries? Do we just contact you when we want to buy one? So generally, in fact, so both work. So you can, of course, get in contact with our partners like WELBO in every country, or even contact them, even if they are not in your country, to get the robots, or you can also go to us to get more information. As we do not develop the application, we will always give you back the contact of one of our partners that developed an application for your project. So
yeah, I get a lot of questions around the business model. So I think just to give you a number, if you want, we have a number of tiers of service. Yes, so there is a monthly cost for service that we definitely recommend. So to give you an idea, our customers typically pay around 1,875 euros per month, including the robot, including the service, including the software, including the updates, no hidden costs, no additional costs, no sort of drive to your office costs. We provide on-site service within Europe. So it's, yeah, it's the full package for that number. And there is, of course, some elements and some options that you can choose, but that's sort of the number that you should be looking at, I think. And the benefit of a monthly model is that you're certain that you always get the latest hardware, because this is version 9 actually of the robot. Since it still looks the same as in 2015.
15, yeah.
But it's a completely different robot. And we often get, yeah, that's Pepper, it doesn't hear you very well. Well, if you're using a robot from 2015, obviously, yeah, make sure you have the latest one. And that's why we always recommend going for
could you specify the number of the monthly number?
1875. But let's take that conversation offline, because then I can show you. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense just putting numbers out there, but I can show you what that contains, and it's a longer conversation than a soundbite at the end of.
Yeah. We understand it's risky to make any hardware changes, but how accessible and easy is it to make any changes in the hardware? For example, can we add an extra camera on the head or additional screen, or swap the screen? That is a really difficult question to answer. In fact, it is difficult. It is quite difficult to make changes. Even on our side, we are for that, we actually recommend that you don't touch anything, especially for the warranty. We are working on a way of making so for you to connect, or for partners even like WELBO, to connect additional sensors and or cameras, stuff like that, on the robot, to make it a lot easier on that. Coming soon.
Yes, so it is definitely possible. We can work with you to do it. I would challenge the need for it hard. So I think, for example, all the examples that I hear are probably, I've heard many examples like payment terminals, temperature scanners, additional cameras, etc., etc., etc. Many of those, if not most, can be solved by putting a separate device next to the robot. Because building hardware is complicated, and SoftBank is pretty good at it, but tinkering with the hardware yourself is a path that I would definitely support, but I would strongly advise against it before embarking on it. Yeah.
Yes, and are there any interfaces to connect Pepper with other applications or robots?
Absolutely, we do. We have that in place here at the office. For example, we have a robot. You can order your drink through Pepper. We have a different robot to deliver your drink. We have guidance robots. We have an open API that we have a very simple dashboard that allows you to configure the robot. But we also have an open API. So if you have developers that you can just build things in your own language that you prefer, and then you can just tell our servers to get the robot to do certain things. So that's very much possible, and that's even supported by us actively, because we think it's great that you don't reinvent the wheel with the sort of the receptionist, the hospitality part. But then if you have all algorithms that you want to run on top of this, we definitely support that, and we have ways to do that.
Yes, and will the recording of this session be available? Yes, it will be available, I think, this afternoon. And we will also post it on our blog at SoftBank Robotics. So yes, it will be available as soon as this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, or tomorrow morning, but I think this afternoon. Can Pepper handle Visa payment, or can a small lightweight wireless POS be attached to it by any means?
Yeah, again, yes. And I would probably advise to put a little kiosk next to it for that physical device, because then, yeah, it's just easy, more robust. It's just more robust.
And I think that's it. We run through all the questions today. If you have more questions, please feel free to contact us, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our capabilities. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Ron. Thank you, Nicole.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.